What is happening, folks? Today we're talking about the cyclical nature of training and how to avoid training plateaus. Let's break it down. So when we're talking about the cyclical nature of training, essentially we are discussing training periodization, which is the systematic planning of physical or athletic training, which involves the progressive cycling of various aspects of a training program during specific periods. Now, when we neglect the science behind training periodization, this is what leads to the plateau. Because essentially what we're looking at is this. We start out with a minimal effective dose. That could be technique, less intensity, less volume. You're really just dialing things in into an accumulation phase, a peak, and then an intentional drop off, or your deload, right? So that would be one mesocycle. Once we deload, we can rinse and repeat, but next time that second peak, you're going to be stronger or bigger or faster, whatever the goal is, right? So if we cycle through these mesocycles and peak a few times, every time we peak, we're going to be closer to the goal. Now, when it comes to helping you avoid a plateau or get out of a plateau, which is what a lot of my clients deal with when they come my way, is the fact that they're trying to live in this peak phase forever, right? And we know that that doesn't work. We have to set you up with these intentional peaks and valleys. For example, when you see an athlete in peak performance, right? They're performing their best. Well, that's really only a sliver of what their year looks like. Let's say a powerlifting athlete, for example. They've built up and probably peaked a couple times to get to that peak performance for that event. But that's only a sliver of what their year looks like. They're not doing that all year round. And the more advanced ones, I guarantee you, they have coaches behind them running the show. So after that peak performance, they're dropping off into a deload or post-season recovery phase. And just by the way, this sounds like something for athletes, right? But we can take this on a micro scale and apply it to the novice. In fact, after the novice has dialed in technique and gotten to a reasonable level of strength, we should be incorporating periodization into their training cycles to continue their progress, avoid fatigue, which is the enemy of performance, and of course, avoid injury and burnout. So here's the cool thing about training periodization is that while it's evidence-based and science-backed, which is awesome, we can actually get very similar answers about this from nature. So here's an analogy I've been using to simplify my explanation about the cyclical nature of training and how to avoid plateaus to my clients for quite a long time now. So essentially what we have here is in-season, post-season recovery, off-season, and then pre-season. 4 seasons. So let's start with in-season, your peak performance, that powerlifting meet, for example. So in-season, let's say summer, is when things really thrive. Plants, animals, the sun's out, you're vibrant, you feel great. That's your in-season peak performance phase. So naturally, autumn or fall comes after summer, which is when things start to die off a little bit. It's time to chill and kind of relax from that peak, thriving summer phase. Following that, of course, we head into winter, a darker time when not a whole lot's going on, and you're starting to focus and hunker down on new skills. For example, maybe it's a new strength. Maybe you need to get a little bit bigger. Maybe you and or your coach recognize some weaknesses during that peak phase or some imbalances that you need to improve upon. This off-season phase, or winter, is the time to do that. You're not up at that peak performance, you are working on things, you're finding new skills to work on and honing in on them, but you're not peaking just yet. And then of course we have spring, or your pre-season accumulation phase after the off-season. Plants are starting to come back to life, the weather's warmer, the sun's coming back, animals are more active. This is where you take all of these skills that you've been working on in the off-season and start to put them to the test a little bit. Not to peak just yet, you're preparing for that, but you start to take those skills and ramp things up a little bit until you start to peak. And then finally, it's summer again. We're in peak phase of training. We've built up towards it. We've taken these newfound skills, ramped them up, and then we're peaking. Now, of course, these cycles in training don't need to be as long as a whole year or like the 4 seasons. In fact, what I just explained there is what's called a mesocycle. And you can do multiple mesocycles in 1 year. But back to the plateau, after an assessment of what has led an individual to a plateau, whether it be strength performance, size, or fat loss, oftentimes they've gotten to a certain level of performance or fat loss, a level of leanness or muscular size, and they've just tried to stay there and push that needle further and further and further. And that just doesn't work long term. So ultimately what this comes down to at that point is implementing tried and true strategies. And on that note, folks, If you are stuck in a plateau, you're not sure what to do, and you're frustrated about it, go ahead, hit that link in my bio, schedule yourself a free strategy call, and we'll chat about how we break through your plateau. All right, folks, I hope this video helps. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Feel free to DM me with your questions, and I'll talk to you soon.